Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Jensen from Dean's Chat. If you're on the fence as to whether you want to join the American Podiatric Medical Association, jump on in. It's a new APMA. Whether it's advocacy concerns, scope of practice, billing and coding, consider membership at the APMA as your professional insurance. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dean's Chat, where we discuss all things podiatric medicine. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Jensen. I'm the Dean at the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine and also the host for the Dean's Chat podcast. Once again, I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Johanna Richey. Hi, Jo.
Hey, Jeff. How you doing?
You know, I'm doing fabulous. Summer in Arizona and doing the best we can with the heat, you know?
Yeah, but you know what? I will say this has been a quite lovely summer. We've only had a couple days over 105. And I know that for the rest of the world, that sounds crazy. But it's actually been quite nice. In fact, I've been spending so much time outside that I've got bug bites, and I don't usually have to deal with bug bites. So it has been a really lovely summer so far. And I'm in a one month from now, I won't feel that way. But for right now, I'm going to take it for every day that's under 110 is a good day. So
there you go. Well, Jo, we have a phenomenal guest today, Dr. Alex Corr. Welcome to Dean's Chat.
Thanks a lot, Jeff and Jo. Appreciate being here.
You know, we're fairly informal on Dean's Chat. Dr. Corr, if it's okay with you, let's go first names. Alex, Jo, and Jeff.
Sounds like a good idea.
Well, Alex, it's an honor and a privilege to have you on. A couple months ago, I was on LinkedIn and I clicked on your TED Talk about your parents being Holocaust victims, or survivors, I should say. And it was just so moving to me. I reached out immediately and asked if you would be willing to join us on Dean's Chat. So if you'll let me indulge, I'm gonna give you a little more formal introduction.
Sure.
Dr. Corr originally is from Terre, Haute, Indiana. He's the son of two Holocaust survivors, Michael and Eva Mozes Corr. He has a bachelor's of science in chemistry from Butler and a master's degree in exercise physiology from Purdue. He got his doctor of podiatric medicine degree from the Scholl College of Podiatric Medicine and is currently the full-time podiatrist for Hendricks Regional Health in Danville, Indiana. You're also a clinical professor at the DO School at Marian University. Board certified by the American College of Foot and Ankle Surgery. He's also a fellow and past president of the American Academy of Podiatric Sports Medicine, and he's the team podiatrist for Butler University. I also know you have quite a history, Alex, in playing tennis, and we'll talk about that a little bit too.
Sure.
But knowing the importance of being a son of two Holocaust survivors who have both passed away in the last 5.5 years, Dr. Corr feels an obligation to tell their stories. And since 1985, he's traveled to Auschwitz more than 20 times. In fact, just came back from Poland a couple days ago. You're a member of CANDLE's Holocaust Museum and Education Center Board of Directors. You've also authored a new book with Graham Honecker called A Blessing, Not a Burden, which chronicles your parents' lives and how they lived and how they positively impacted you. Dr. Corr, again, welcome to Dean's Chat.
Jeff and Jo, thanks a lot for having me, and I look forward to telling your listeners and viewers all about that. So yes.
Well, thank you. You know, I don't mind kicking it off. When I listened to that 15-minute TEDx talk about forgiveness, I think that was the theme that you were discussing in your mother's philosophy. Can you kind of give a little history of how you got involved in giving the TEDx talk, and then, of course, we'll get more involved with the Holocaust in your parents?
Yeah, Jeff, as you mentioned, about 14 months ago, Graham Honecker and I released the book, Blessing, Not a Burden. And I have been pretty active. I'm still working as a full-time podiatrist, but I've been pretty active speaking and lecturing, doing book talks, book signings. And to answer your question, I got an email in November and it had TED Talk IU. And I thought, well, I don't know anybody. I don't know anything about a TED Talk. And I literally came this close to deleting it. And I thought, well, maybe I should open that up. So I opened it up, and it was an invitation to talk to one of the people in charge. It's a student-run TED Talk, and spoke to the student, and one thing led to another. And then I had some friends helping me and developed a script. And there's a movie about my mother, a couple movies, but the most recent one was Eva A-7063. done by a PBS station here in Indianapolis and Ted Green Films. And we use those videos, portion of those videos for my TED Talk to kind of complement my talk. And then I started practicing. And, I don't know about you, Jeff, but when we talk and lecture, it's a little different than memorizing a story that has to choreograph with videos and pictures. And so I practice at night, weekends between seeing patients. And it was in February that it was the event. And the day before, I still was not sure that I had everything memorized perfectly. And on a Friday night, we did it in front of a big audience. And I thought there were 5 other talks that night, and mine was the only one pertinent to history. And to kind of get to the point, my mom was one of the Mengele twins. And during World War II at Auschwitz, there was a Dr. Joseph Mengele, and he used 3,000 identical twins, ages 3 to 15, to do experiments. And most people argue that probably the purpose of the experiments was to develop fertility drugs so that German mothers could perpetuate the race at a higher volume. And so he used twins, and my mom and my aunt were 2 of those twins. And typically children aged 3 to 15 would be typically sent immediately to the gas chamber. My mom survived because she was a twin, because she was using medical experiments. And she was liberated on January 27th, 1945. And as we say, when we talk about my mom, she was freed physically in 1945, but she didn't free herself emotionally till 1995. And through a strange series of circumstances, and we can go into greater detail, she met a Nazi doctor in 1993, about 4 months after my mom's twin, my aunt, died. And through meeting him, his name was Dr. Munch, Dr. Hans Munch. Gets a little complicated here, but he helped save 20-some Jewish doctors at Auschwitz. And my mom had heard his story and was asked by a professor at Boston College, Dr. Michalczyk, Eva, sorry to hear about your sister dying, but maybe you want to start lecturing again. Would you want to come to Boston College and lecture to a bunch of doctors? My mom, she said, oh, I love lecturing to doctors. Those doctors, they think they know everything. I'll give them a good piece of my own medicine. And then he said, Eva, it might be a strange request, but maybe you could find one of those Nazi doctors and bring them to the meeting at Boston College. My mom had a strange sense of humor, and she said, Dr. Michalczyk, I'm not sure where I could find one of those Nazi doctors. The last time I looked, they were not advertising in the yellow pages. And Dr. Michalczyk said, well, Eva, I'm sure you'll think of something. And so my mom remembered the last project that my mom and my aunt worked on before my aunt died was for a German network, ZDF. And when the final package came out, there was a Nazi doctor named Hans Munch who was on the documentary. And my mom thought, well, surely I'll contact him and he'll come to Boston. My mom contacts Dr. Munch's family. The response was, he'll give you an interview, Eva, but he's not coming to Boston. You got to go to Germany. My mom was petrified to go back to Germany. Even hearing German language gave her nightmares again. She finally, we had friends who were involved with the Dutch TV program, TV network. They came and came to Dr. Munch's house. And my mom was already on this path of trying to figure out what's next, what would be her next challenge. And she thought her sister had just died. There were still well over 180 twins still alive around the world. Maybe Dr. Munch knew what Dr. Mengele had injected into the twins, and maybe she could help the other twins avoid the same predicament, the same fate as my aunt. First question to Dr. Munch. Dr. Munch, you worked alongside Dr. Mengele. Do you know what he injected to us? I'm trying to help the other twins. And Dr. Munch said, Eva, I'm sorry you came all this way. Dr. Mengele kept everything to himself. I know nothing about his experiments. But then he said, I have nightmares too. My mom said, what? You have nightmares too? I thought we were the ones with the nightmares. Dr. Munch, why do you have nightmares? And he said, well, Eva, besides helping save these 20-some Jewish doctors, which is well chronicled, periodically I had to stand outside the gas chamber. And when the last body stopped moving, I signed one death certificate. And my mom was a quick thinker, and she went on to ask him additional questions about the gas chamber, about the operation of the camp. And in his living room, he told my mom the entire story of what he did and what other doctors did. And my mom said, Dr. Mooch, here in your living room, you've told me so much, but you need to tell the story to the world. For all the people that say the Holocaust didn't occur, would you come with us to Auschwitz in January of 1995, the 50th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz? Would you come with us, the Mengele twins, and tell the world what you just told me? And he said, sure, I'll be glad to come. So my mom gets back to Terre Haute and tells me, yeah, he doesn't know anything about the Mengele experiments, but he's coming with us to Auschwitz to document history. I said, Mom, not a good idea. Well, I don't care what you think, Alex. You think you know everything, but now I need to figure out, I need to thank a Nazi doctor for documenting history. How do I thank a Nazi doctor? I said, I don't know. My mom went to the local Hallmark card shop in Terre, Indiana for 2.5 hours looking for a thank you card for a Nazi doctor. Eva, what are you looking for? I'm just looking. My parents didn't drink alcohol much. My mom went to a liquor store looking for a thank you gift. Nothing seemed appropriate. And for months prior to January of 1995, she kept on thinking. And I wasn't living at home, and she called me 6 months before we were going for the 50th anniversary. She goes, I figured it out. I figured out the highest honor I could give another human being in my name only, and I stress that, in my name only, I'm going to thank Dr. Mooch for doing this by forgiving him. And I said, Mom, I don't care what you think. It's a good idea because it's in my name only. It's the highest honor. I'm showing him the most respect. It's truly a gift he'll appreciate. But now I need to write a document. And English was her fifth language. So she prepared a document and was always worried about spelling mistakes. So she took it to her local English professor and said, Dr. Kaufman, I need you to look at this document because at some point, maybe in history books, somebody will read it. Oh, Eva, there's no mistakes, but I think you're forgiving the wrong guy. And my mom said, no, I want to thank Dr. Mooch. And Dr. Kaufman said, you ought to think about it. No, I know what I'm doing. So on January 27, 1995, at the ruins of the gas chamber, I was there. My sister was there. Several other Mengele twins were there. Dr. Mooch's son and daughter and his granddaughter were there. And he knew nothing. He knew nothing about my mom's forgiveness, my mom's thank you. And he told his story just like he did in the living room of his house 18 months earlier. He did show remorse, but he knew nothing. There was no deal made between my mom and Dr. Mooch. And then my mom surprised him by thanking him, by forgiving him. And my mom, I remember like it was yesterday, a Bulgarian reporter asked, Eva, so you're forgiving Dr. Mooch. What about Dr. Mengele? No. I want to thank Dr. Mooch because I want to give him a gift. And then over the next several months, by the spring or summer of 95, my mom realized she no longer had this chip on her shoulder. She no longer hated things German. So she thought, this forgiveness idea, it was a gift to Dr. Mooch, but really she was giving herself a gift. And she had a lot of resentment toward her parents because her parents had an opportunity to save the family. So she thought, well, I'm going to forgive Dr. Mooch, but I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to forgive my mom. I'm going to forgive my dad. I'm going to forgive myself for hating my parents. I'm going to forgive Dr. Mengele who did the experiments in my name only. And I'm going to forgive all Nazis in my name only. And that last part is calmly criticized, and I get it. And I asked my mom, why all Nazis? It's kind of like you're saying you're doing this in your name only, but how can you forgive all Nazis? And she said, look, Alex, I don't want in 2 or 3 or 4 years another Nazi doctor coming to me and say, well, I worked alongside Dr. Mengele. I want you to forgive me too. She wanted to move forward. And in her mind was she was going to get a clean slate. She knew there was going to be criticized, and she wanted to move forward. And I truly believe, to come to your question, that it gave her another 24 years of life. And so when I was approached by IU, Indiana University, they knew the story. And I think if you watch the TED Talk, even though I broke down in tears at the end, I think I did a decent job in explaining how my mom got to forgiveness and the benefits of forgiveness to the average person unrelated to the Holocaust. And so that's maybe a longer version of the story that you wanted, but I thought I would tie everything in.
No, it's beautiful. And it's interesting. They say you had to practice and practice because it almost, I thought you just got up and started talking. It didn't look memorized at all, Alex. It was just beautiful.
Well, thank you. The weird thing is there's all these beams of light and I could not see 250 people in the audience. And every time I looked in the audience, I got blinded. So I kept on looking down on the video, but it looks like I'm thinking and kind of extemporaneously coming up with ideas. But there was a little monitor to my left. And so I knew I had a clicker, but no, it worked out well. And during the process, I thought I'll never do this again, but I think I would if I was asked again. But no, I'm very proud of it. And I'm glad I did it. And I had a lot of help. A lot of people made me look good. But yeah, I think it's, as we say, I'm on the Candles Holocaust Museum board and we have a lot of big plans. And even on our board, we argue, people on the board argue, not everybody is entirely happy with the idea of forgiveness. And the ironic thing about my parents' story, and as you mentioned, my dad's also a survivor. My dad was not so forgiving. And at the dinner table, my mom and dad would argue. And my mom passed away during our trip to Auschwitz 6 years ago on July 4th, last week. Ironically, she passed away on Independence Day in Krakow, Poland, 70 miles from when her parents died and her sisters died. It's sad. Some people think it's poetic, but for me, it wasn't so poetic. And I usually stay in the hotel where she passed away. But after my mom died, about 6 months later, one of the camps my dad was in was Stutthof, which is near Gdansk, Poland, on the Baltic. And in January of 2020, right before the pandemic, there was a Stutthof guard who was on trial. And so we have friends in Europe, and they said, well, they're looking for people who were at Stutthof during this time. Your dad was there at this time. They're asking for a statement. And I didn't know what my dad would say. I had no idea. And we told him the story. He goes, well, let me think about it. And he was 93 or 94, still of sound mind. And so I thought, well, he's probably going to say the guy should be hanged, he should be killed or in prison. So 2 days later, we came back with a tape recorder and we were all set. He was in a nursing home and he said, Alex, it's real simple. In your mom's memory, I'm going to forgive Bruno Day, DUI. And he went on to say several other things, and the statement was read in court in Germany. But for me, that's always a very touching thing that my dad would have that presence to realize that he too could make a difference. And he too realized the benefits of forgiveness from my mom. And he was one of my mom's staunchest critics.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah. I mean, not vocally, but, in the house. And he would say, oh, your mom likes to do these things. I keep a low profile. And in fact, we talk about the book, the last year and a half, my dad was in a nursing home in my hospital. I saw my dad breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I have DO students that rotate with me, and they're there to learn about podiatry. They were learning a lot of geriatric medicine by hanging out with my dad.
I remember all the videos you used to post with your dad.
Yeah. He was in my hospital.
Yeah.
Huh? Oh. Yeah, he was in. During COVID, I couldn't see him anymore. We did the thing through the window with the tablet, and I got him transferred in my hospital. We had an extended care unit. And it was a stroke of luck. But my father, during the last year and a half of his life, I spent a lot of time with him, and I said, Dad, nobody knows your story, and your story is just incredible. And he said, oh, Alex, nobody will buy the book. I said, no, I think people will be interested. And so I'm glad the book's out, and my friend and co-author Graham Honaker has a lot to do with it. He kind of designed, and then we worked together as a team. But no, my father's story is unique, and I can tell, I'm sure there's some sports fans, and I don't know if you're a big fan of sports, Jeff, but there's some funny, interesting stories with both my parents that I'd be glad to tell. Somewhat related to podiatry, but not so much.
Joe, I'm interested in all the stories, Alex. Joe, your thoughts?
Yeah, we want all the stories. Well, so Alex, what a beautiful opportunity to share your parents' legacy and talk about the experiences that they had and have the experiences in their life that you lived with them. And I'm curious, if I understood you correctly, your mom spent 50 years of her life holding on to that. Did you notice a difference in her demeanor, or in who she was at that 1995 period where she chose forgiveness? Was there anything that you noticed in a change?
Absolutely. I'll reference a movie. You can see it on Amazon, Eva A-7063, narrated by none other than Ed Asner, who did it for free. He was a family friend. I can tell you some funny stories about Ed. But the director, producer, Ted Green, did an incredible job of showing my mom's anger and frustration. And there's so many negative things that happened before 1995. Then after 1995, the last place that she saw her parents was at the selection platform at Auschwitz. My mom would dance the hora. It's a Jewish dance on the selection platform because in her mind, this was the last place that she had joy in her life. And she didn't want that joy to end there. So, absolutely, the change in her personality. I mean, she was always very loving and very caring, but she laughed more, she smiled more. And I mean, we would go back. I mean, this past trip, it was 20 some times with my mom. Last week was my 31st trip. Over 30 times I've been back to Auschwitz. And my mom would go back sometimes, and she was still doing real estate in her 70s, and she would be frustrated. She'd go back to Auschwitz and have this incredible energy. I mean, I said, Mom, I thought you were sick. Like, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. And so, no, she had, and people would go. I mean, this trip, we had 50 some people. We had people from all walks of life. We had 19 students, high school age, Montana, New Jersey, Indiana. And we've had people, usually be 100 people, but she would just take everybody along with her. And people a lot of times would come with us and be very apprehensive about seeing the camp. And then they saw how she interacted with everybody. And usually by the end of the week, people were really more comfortable in talking about the Holocaust. And they were even more comfortable, Jeff, to go back to the point about forgiveness. They would talk more about forgiving somebody, or, if Eva could forgive the Nazis or Dr. Mengele or Dr. Munch, I surely can forgive a grandfather who wronged me, or a coworker, or a former girlfriend or former wife or whatever. So she really had this ability to really transcend generations. And people would come to Candle's Holocaust Museum, which is still in existence. We're doing very well, sometimes to learn about the Holocaust, but a lot of times to learn about how to forgive. Eva, how did you forgive? I need to forgive somebody in my family. And my mom, had a way to get through to people that I think like no other. And one other thing, it's not related to your question, Joe, but my mom had this uncanny ability to relate to kids. And one of the things was that when my mom and my aunt stepped on the selection platform and their father and two sisters vanished in the crowd, they were holding onto their mother's arms. My mom always thought that was the last time she had a childhood. She was 10 years old. So she really identified with kids and thought it was so important for young kids, age 10, 11, 12, to learn history in very childlike terms. And one thing I'll tell you, one time, 10-year-old boy is at the museum in Terre, Haute. He says, Eva or Mrs. Korb, who taught you how to survive Auschwitz? Normal question for a 10-year-old. And my mom, like I said earlier, was a quick thinker. She got up and got right in the kid's face, and he took a step back. And my mom said, why'd you take a step back? Well, you got too close to me. And my mom said, that's how I survived Auschwitz. Meaning it was just a knee-jerk response. Nobody taught her anything. And everything just she did it by the seat of her pants, just trying to, I'll do this today, and hopefully, things will get better. I'm going to live another day. And every day was to live another day. And so, but no, to answer your question, Joe, absolutely, there was this transformation. And I even saw it in my dad toward the end of his life. I mean, he did not want to lecture at the museum. My mom opened up Candle's Holocaust Museum in 1980. The organization was founded in 1984. The museum was founded after my aunt died. The museum started in 1995. And my dad had retired as a pharmacist 2 years later. And my mom was still working as a real estate agent. She said, Mickey, 2 days a week, I know you don't talk about your past. I need you to lecture or need you to be at the museum. Oh, I won't talk about it. Fine. And so just a real quick, funny story. a class comes in and they had made arrangements for my mom to speak. And it was a bunch of high school students, very smart kids. And the teacher was a substitute teacher, but he wrote a sports column on the weekends. And he came to the museum and he said, "Oh, is Eva here?" And my dad said, "No, Mike." And they knew each other. She had a sales call, but I'm here. And they said, "Oh, too bad the kids were looking forward to meeting a Holocaust survivor." And my dad said, "Well, Mike, I'm actually a survivor." And Mike said, "What? I've known you for 20 years. I didn't know you were." Yeah, you know what? I don't talk about it, but I'll give your kids a lecture. That was my dad's first lecture. And when my dad was liberated, I know we're confusing things. When my dad was liberated by an American GI from Terre, Indiana in April of 1945, he was given a Coca-Cola. That was his champagne.
Oh my.
And so when I was a little kid, I didn't know what Pepsi was. We had Coca-Cola breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So he tells these kids in 1997, they're in high school, about the Coca-Cola. So a couple of weeks later, they came back with a 6-pack of Coke with all kind of messages, perseverance and courage and liberty and freedom. And so, my father, and so Mike, the writer, wrote a weekend article, kind of my dad's coming out of the closet. And my dad was a big Purdue fan. Purdue basketball plays at Mackey Arena. And one of my dad's lines was that if the Nazis had won out and he would not have survived, there'd be one more open seat at Mackey Arena. My dad had season tickets to Purdue basketball for like 40 years. So anyway, I went too many tangents, but
no, it was great. I felt like I got to know your dad when he was in the hospital because you posted all those videos about Purdue and the basketball team and things. It was so touching, Alex. It was wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of he would tell me I keep a low profile, but I would turn on the video and he would start talking. He would give predictions, and friends of mine, I don't bet at all, but friends of mine said, "I need your dad's input on the Purdue Illinois game this weekend."
yeah, really, over under.
But no, we had a good time with that, and he really, an ironic story was when I was practicing in Milwaukee, and my parents were getting a little older. I was looking for a way to get back to Indiana, and Purdue and Butler. I'm a big Butler fan, but I'm also a Purdue fan. They were both playing in the first round of the NCAA tournament in Milwaukee, not against each other. So I went to the Butler Hotel after we won, and Purdue's there, and I see Coach Matt Painter, who I'd met a couple times, and I, "Coach, nice win." He goes, "Hey, Alex, how you doing?" And my Mrs. Painter, Matt's mother, had come to Candle's Holocaust Museum about a year earlier. And my dad gave us his lecture. And a couple of weeks, she told my dad, "My son, he works at Purdue." And my dad says, "Professor," and she didn't answer. She comes back a couple of weeks later with this big box. And my dad remembered, "Oh, yeah, your son, he's a professor at Purdue." And Mrs. Painter says, "No, he works in the athletic department." And my dad says, "Ticket manager?" She goes, "No, open the box." It's a basketball 2 Mickey core from Coach Matt Painter. My dad said, "Matt Painter, that's my son." So I see Matt and I said, "Is your mom here?" I had not met her. "Oh, yeah, she's right behind you." And so I meet Matt's mother, Michelle, and I was looking at a job here. I said, "There's a chance I'm going to be moving to a suburb of Indianapolis." She goes, "Oh, Alex, if you move down here, you need to live in our building. And if you tell them that I told you about it, I'll get $500 off my rent." For the next 3 years, she was my next door neighbor. And I got to know Matt pretty well. And it's a nice story. So, yeah,
that's wonderful. I've always been a Purdue fan because I always liked Gene Cady.
Yeah, I've met Coach Cady in the past. And obviously Matt Painter played for Coach Cady. And they have an Israeli player this year on the team starting this fall. So it'll be interesting. 6'4", he's a big stud. Yeah, he's going to be really good. So,
Alex, I'd be interested in. You said you had a couple really cool stories about your dad. Any others?
I got a lot of stories. This is in the nursing home. The first day he gets transferred from Terre Haute to a suburb of Indianapolis where I worked, and he had just fallen a couple days earlier, and I was worried about him falling. He's not in this new unit for 2 hours, and I get a phone call. "There's a problem with your dad." And I thought, "Oh no, he fell again." So I walk down the hall, 50 feet down the hall, and I'm expecting he's going to be on the ground. And I see him as in the dining room. Again, Purdue is gold and black. he was sometimes when he would eat, he would need a bib. And I look and they have a red and white bib on him. He's not eating. He's pointing at the bib, like really mad, pointing at the bib. I walk up and I take the bib off and he goes, finally, somebody understands I'm a Purdue fan. I'm not a IU fan. And everybody got a big laugh and kick out of it. And that was his sense of humor. I mean, he was serious, but so we put Purdue bibs on him the rest of the way. We made bibs. But yeah, I'll tell you some other funny little stories. I mean, when I lecture, Jeff and Joe, I tell people, look, hopefully you'll be motivated. Hopefully you'll be inspired. You may cry. So I usually cry at some point during the lecture. But I said I would be doing a big disservice to my parents if I told their story and people didn't laugh, because there was so much humor in their life, predominantly after the war. But just a couple short stories about their sense of humor. 1995, we have Dr. Munch on the bus. We have 100 people on 2 buses. Usually for the big anniversary in January, when it's the 50th anniversary, the security's crazy. And so we get to the gate. They are not letting us in the gate. We have 2 buses. We have a whole itinerary plan. So my mom gets off the gate, or gets out of the bus and approaches the gate, and security's there. And they said, ma'am, you need a permit. My mom rolls up her sleeve, Auschwitz number. Look, there's my permit. 50 years ago, you wouldn't let me out. Now you won't let me in. The gates open up, and we had no problems.
Wow.
And a couple other stories. Ted Green, gentleman that did the movie in 2018, got my mom to be a Grand Marshal for the Indy 500 in 2017, I believe. And so a lot of funny stories. My mom had a little bit of a lead foot. My dad would joke to her when I was younger, you drive like Mario Andretti, because he had just won 1966, the Indy 500. So it was about 3 weeks before the race, and she was doing some promotional thing. And who's there? My mom and Mario Andretti. So Mario Andretti is a twin, identical twin, and he was from Italy. And at the end of the war, his house was taken away. He was in a refugee camp. He's not Jewish, but he was in a refugee camp. So they're comparing stories. And Mario Andretti says, well, I have a secret to tell, but don't tell anybody. Usually after the race, they would put the top 3 finishers, they still do this, on the finish line by their car and take a picture. Soon as the race is over, after Mario Andretti wins, it's a downpour. The next morning, he had to go to some other event. So in the picture that's taken, it's his twin brother in that picture that's in the museum.
That's funny. That is a great story.
When the race was here in May, somebody ran into him, a friend of mine, said, oh, I'm good friends with Eva Kor's son. And Mary said, oh, she was in 1 in a million. So that's a funny story. Then during the, prior to the start of the race, we had to be on the red carpet. So we get to the red carpet, and Jake Gyllenhaal, the actor's behind us, and all the cameras are on him. And when my mom lectured to children, particularly kids, high school students, she would say, I'm an Auschwitz survivor, but I'm prejudiced too. And kids would look at her, why are you prejudiced, Mrs. Kor? Well, I don't like guys with long hair. I don't like guys with tattoos. I don't like guys with earrings and torn jeans. I think they're all drug addicts. And one time she lectured at high school, and she's going to the auditorium, and there's 3 kids in front of her, torn jeans, long hair, earrings. And my mom said their pants were cleaning the floor, and one of them had the audacity to drop a pencil and bend over and pick it up. My mom said, I saw things I've never seen before. So she tells the teachers, oh, those 3 kids with long hair, torn jeans, and earrings, they must be your drug addicts. And the teacher said, no, Eva, they're actually our valedictorians. One's going to Yale, one's going to Harvard. Really? So she would tell kids this story that she too needed to not judge people on their appearance, but what's inside. So we're on the red carpet, and out comes this guy from nowhere, sunglasses, long hair, torn jeans, earrings, and he goes, hey, baby, let's take a picture. And I see him, and I'm thinking, how do I know him? And now all the cameras went from Jake Gyllenhaal to my mom and this guy, taking picture, and I'm standing back, and he looks at me, and he says, hey, man, take good care of her. And I'm thinking, how do I know him? But I don't want to ask him how I know him. So we get up and to watch the race, and about an hour and a half later, on the Indy Star website, they say only at the Indy 500 would you have Holocaust survivor and Grand Marshal Eva Kor and Motley Crue's Nikki Sixx. Now, the funny story about that is when I was a teenager, even through high school, my parents would not let my sister and I go to rock concerts. Why? Everybody did drugs. So I tell my mom, that's one of the guys. You didn't let, oh, he's a nice boy. He needs to forgive himself. And so at the end of the race, my mom was on Twitter. She loved being on Twitter. And she tweeted him, "Dear Mr. Sixx, how can I become a rock star like you?" He tweets back, "Even my dear, you've been a rock star your whole life." And so they exchanged. My mom would text people and I would lose track of where she was at. And so about 4 months later, she calls me one day. And I said, and I would tell her, don't call me in the middle of the day. I'm with patients, only if it's an emergency. So it's middle of the day. I said, what's wrong? Oh, nothing's wrong here. But I just want to let you know I'm with Nikki, and he's going to be okay. He's going to learn how to forgive himself. So a couple months later, she was having shoulder problems. And I said, Mom, how's your shoulder doing? She goes, oh, Alex, it's so much better. Nikki's been giving me this stuff called CBD oil. It's really good for my shoulder. So I could go on, and I'm sure you want to cover other topics. But in fact, when my mom passed away, my mom always wore a scarf around her neck to hide her double chin. A couple days later, I get a text from a strange number. It was Nikki Sixx, and he said, can I have one of your mom's scarves? So I keep in touch with him. I've never met him, but he's been a big supporter of my efforts and my mom's efforts.
Oh my gosh. That Motley Crue Home Sweet Home is one of my favorite songs.
Did you know APMA provides help with public health initiatives such as fall prevention, opioid abuse prevention, and addressing health disparities?
Did you know the APMA provides over $400,000 in scholarships annually to students pursuing podiatric medicine, helping the next generation of foot and ankle specialists?
If you're serious about this profession, if you want to grow, to lead, to make a lasting impact, join APMA today.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible stories, Alex. Joe, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, how do you even follow some of this up? I mean, I want to just hear you keep talking about.
Yeah.
I'll give you a podiatry story. I'll give you a little bit of a podiatry story. So in 2010, my mom had a book that was called Surviving the Angel of Death. And she gets a phone call from a guy in LA. He's talking, well, you need to make this book into a movie. And he's going on and on and on. And my mom says, look, it's very nice. We have this documentary from 2007 called Forgiving Dr. Mengele. No, it should be a motion picture. Look, write down this phone number. My mom writes it down. And who is it? Oh, well, it's a good friend of mine. His name's Ed Asner. And my mom says, yeah, and I'm Mary Tyler Moore. And so she tells me this, and I'm on the East Coast and practicing. And so I said, Mom, it's not Ed Asner, but call him. So 2 nights later, it's the old days of landlines. For 4 hours, I'm calling my parents' phone number, busy. So finally at 11:30, I get through. I said, so was it Ed Asner? She goes, oh, yeah, Ed Yitzhak Asner, born in Orthodox Jew in Kansas City. He's very interested, but I'm going to go out to L.A. in a couple months. So I lose track. A couple months later, she calls me in the middle of the day. I said, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Ed wants to talk to you. I said, okay. Hi, Mr. Asner. No, don't call me Mr. It's Ed. I understand you're a podiatrist. I said, yeah. He said, well, in case I have a foot problem, I want to be able to call you. I want you to pick up the phone. So what do I want? He goes, well, put my numbers in your phone. So I put Ed Asner home, Ed Asner cell. The movie project never really happened, but Ed was an expert on hips because he had 7 hip replacements, and my mom was starting to have hip issues. So she would call Ed, not her doctor. And then 6 months later, she has her hip done, and I'm working a basketball game. And my sister calls me. She goes, Mom's out of surgery. Everything's fine. So I text a couple people. I'm at the game. I accidentally text Ed Asner. I look down at my phone, 30 seconds later, vibrated, Ed Asner cell. I go, hello. He goes, who the heck is this? I said, well, it's Alex Kor. Who the heck are you? I said, well, my mom's Eva Corey. He goes, oh, yeah, she had her hip done today. How's she doing? I go, Ed, she's fine. He goes, when are you going to come out here and look at my feet? I said, well, I'm actually going to play a tennis tournament in 3 months in Palm Springs. He goes, perfect. Call me about a week before. So I call him a week before. He goes, oh, this is perfect timing. My family's going to be here. I'm supposed to go to a family reunion. You're going to take me to the family reunion. It'll be a perfect distraction. So I go pick him up at his house in Studio City, and there's a guy walking a dog and goes in the house, and the guy's limping. So I knock on the door. The guy comes out. He goes, are you here to pick up Ed? I said, yeah. I go, you're limping pretty bad. He goes, well, I'm a diabetic. I have an ulcer. I go, take your shoe off. I go, what? He said, what? I said, I'm a foot doctor. He goes, no way. I said, I'm a foot doctor. And Ed always credited me with kind of giving the guy what he needed to do. And to my knowledge, he kept his foot on for many years. So, and then I hung out with Ed, and he would call me all the time. And I think it's been about 2 to 3 years that he passed away. But yeah, and then because of Ed, we met Elliot Gould, and Elliot came to Terre Haute the following year, and it was a similar type relationship. And just some incredible people that my mom, gifted me with to be in their presence. It's pretty special.
Those are just phenomenal stories.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And yeah, there's a lot of funny stories, but just to turn things a little bit, I mean, when I speak to audiences, and I think for me it's so important to be able to talk to kids, and any generation should know these stories, because unfortunately, survivors, Holocaust survivors, are unfortunately passing away each and every day. And I'm considered what's called a 2G, or second generation. And a lot of 2Gs and 3Gs aren't so involved. And one of the kind of call to actions for the book is for more people of my generation and 3Gs to get involved, because we need to be reminded of these stories. I have a friend who has a not-for-profit on the East Coast. It's called Remember the Past, Protect the Future. And I think it's so important that we remember these stories, because things did happen. And when I talk to kids, it's the unfortunate thing that words can lead to actions, which then lead to terrible consequences. And, I just think it's important that we all can adopt these stories and tell these stories to future generations, because at some point, my generation won't be here either. And it's like you and I studying the Civil War. We know it happened, but these things only happened 80 years ago. I mean, it was 80 years ago in January that my mom was liberated. So,
wow. That's so interesting, Alex, that concept of forgiveness. It's amazing that that entered your mom's mind even, I mean, it's truly, truly an incredible story.
No, it is. And, I was just talking to Ted Green, who I've mentioned a couple of times, about 2 hours ago. And before we went back, and I was about to go to podiatry school, and I was working in sales in 1985, and I went back to Auschwitz for the first time in 1985. 8 months earlier, my mom went back by herself with a tape recorder. It was the first time she had been back since January of 1945. And she went on the grounds, she recorded herself. And one of the strange things she said was, Mom, Dad, I will tell our story. I hope you'll be proud of me. And Ted used that very creatively in the movie. And it's now one of the things that I tell, because at the end of Ted's movie, my mom looks up to the skies with a drone overhead. Mom, Dad, I hope you're proud of me. I told our story. And so I think, and I do think it's important to stress that every Holocaust survivor story is important. We had another survivor in Terre Haute. There were 3, and his story was important. I think each story is unique. There are some similarities, but for me, it's important to tell these stories. And so now when I end a lot of my lectures, I always break down when I say this, but I say, Mom, Dad, I hope you're proud of me. I've told your story. And you are my guiding light. And so, but yeah, the forgiveness thing is important. And if we want to talk a little bit about medicine, the other thing I do is this Dr. Munch. I go to medical students. Marian University is an osteopathic school. I've given a lecture, Rush residents in Chicago. But I have this slide that basically is a dilemma. I tell these medical students or young doctors, if you were during your medical career, you were told you cannot continue your medical career unless you join a certain club, would you continue? And so then I tell Dr. Munch's story, because in 1934-35, some of his best friends were Jewish. He was wanting to be a doctor. And then in 1937-38, he was really given this ultimatum. You can go fight on the Russian front, or you can continue your medical career. You have to go to monthly meetings, this Nazi party. He was somewhat nationalistic, but he didn't believe in a lot of these crazy ideas that the Nazis ended up acting out. But he went to these meetings once a month. And then he finished medical school and went back to practice medicine in Germany to 1942. 43, they closed his practice and they said, you go report to Auschwitz. He took his wife initially to Auschwitz. He didn't know what Auschwitz was. And his wife went back to Germany, and he was part of the Hygiene Institute, which was a couple miles away from Auschwitz, but he was not considered an Auschwitz doctor. He did not do selections. And so at the end of the war, he saved 20-some Jewish doctors. One of the doctors is Louis Michiels, who was years later became a psychiatrist at Yale. He gave one of his guns to Louis Michiels. When Dr. Munch's trial came up in 1947 in Krakow, the 20-some Jewish doctors that he helped save came to his defense. He's the only Nazi doctor that was acquitted. He went back to Germany to practice medicine, and he had heard about my mom and then was contacted with my mom. And that's why when he met my mom, he was open to the idea to document history, because he knew that he was in the wrong. And so I tell the story of Dr. Munch in the lecture. I tell the story of my mom, and then I put it all together. And at the end, I tell about my mom's. She gave a lot of medical ethics lectures, predominantly about, if you treat your patient, to show empathy for your patients, if you treat your patient like a number instead of a person, you're kind of getting toward Nazi medicine. You need to treat each patient as if they were a family member, even though we all know it's difficult to do that. And I think a lot of this is to emphasize the empathy that all of us as doctors should show our patients. And my mom did this for years. And ironically, we mentioned that I had cancer. The doctor that treated me also treated some guy by the name of Lance Armstrong. I tell people, no, I didn't win the Tour de France. I didn't date Sheryl Crow. And I definitely didn't do PEDs, but we had the same doctor. And so after I was treated successfully in 1987, when my aunt in 1991 started developing urinary tract polyps, one of them became cancerous. And his name's Dr. Larry Einhorn. He's still practicing. He was old in 1987, but he's still practicing. He brought my aunt to Indiana and gave her free chemo for like 6 months. And unfortunately, she died a year later. But the point is that I talk about that I too, I was part of a study, but I was given informed consent. So you young doctors that are maybe watching and listening, when you tell your patient you're going to do a bunion, you need to explain to the patient, all the conservative options, make sure they have a good understanding in their terms before you do that bunion surgery. And that's just one example. But I was part of a study, and my mom when she spoke about medical ethics, I can remember her speaking at the Baylor School of Medicine in Texas. She talked about that her son was saved because of medical research, but you researchers need to make sure that you treat your patients like people and not like numbers.
Absolutely. No, that's beautiful. Alex, I have a question for you. Would you be interested in coming back for a part 2? Because we're kind of running short on time, and we haven't even touched your career in podiatric medicine and all the great things you've done.
Of course, I'd be glad to come back for a part 2, and I apologize.
No apology necessary. I mean, it might be a part 3 before we're done. You never know. But this has just been so phenomenal. And I want to do justice to your career, too, and not just kind of abbreviate it in a short period of time. But
Jeff and Joe, I'd be glad to come back. Sure.
And so many other fun things that we could discuss. There's so many lessons, courage, inspiration. You talked about both of those, and so many positive framing. The title of your book, A Blessing, Not a Burden. Like, I want to get more into like where you came up with that. And so, yeah, there are so many beautiful stories that we would love to hear.
Sure. Of course. I'd be glad to.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
This has just been a special hour. Thank you for sharing your parents' story. And I know they're proud of you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Thanks.
All right. Joe, any last words?
No, this last weekend was 4th of July weekend, and we were watching Hamilton, and so that "Who Will Tell Your Story?"
Yeah.
Your story's beautiful, Alex.
Thank you.
Well, to all of our listeners, if you're on Apple or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating. If you're watching on YouTube, we'd love for you to become a subscriber. Joe and I will continue to bring you leaders in podiatric medicine. Alex, you're just a special man, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Alex, we're going to send you a Dean's Chat mug.
Okay.
That way you can start your day the Dean's Chat way.
Excellent. Sounds
All right, sounds good. And until next week, everybody, have a wonderful week, and Alex will get on the calendar and we'll continue the story part 2. Okay.
great. Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.